Yuta is a lonely loser by his own choice, after his mommy is cheated on his struggling dad with an astronaut. But God have some different plan for him. One day, his dad gets remarried. Suddenly he found himself living under the same roof with a hot stepsister. One morning, Yuta's dad, Taichi, dropped some unexpected news. He was planning to marry Akiko, a woman who looked after him whenever he got wasted at the bar. Yuta instantly suspected something shady, but Taichi swore she was genuine and promised Yuta would see it for himself when they met later that day. Honestly, Yuta didn't really mind, as long as his dad seemed happy. But then, Taichi added a surprise twist along with a stepmommy. Yuta was about to gain a stepsister. That's when Yuta completely lost his cool and his joystick is on fire.
What do you mean by that?
Later that day, Yuta and Taichi finally sat down with Akiko and her daughter, Saki. But guys, I don't know how he is controlling himself. After some small talk and introductions, Taichi leaned over and quietly told Yuta that he and Saki were actually the same age. Once the meeting wrapped up, Yuta and Saki got a moment alone. Saki admitted she felt relieved, saying she had worried Yuta might turn out to be some annoying guy wanting to play out weird cis-bro fantasies. Then her tone grew serious. She made it clear she didn't expect anything from him, and he shouldn't expect anything from her either. Yuta simply smiled and agreed to keep things that way, but he is thinking how grab her. A few days later, Akiko and Saki came over to Yuta's place. Akiko, being super thoughtful, brought along a bunch of gifts as a thank you, and even praised how cozy their house was. After that, Yuta led Saki to her new room, and she couldn't hide her surprise at how spacious it was. Feeling a little awkward, Yuta apologized that she'd now be living under the same roof with just him and his dad, but Saki brushed it off, saying it didn't bother her. Instead, she asked why he kept speaking so formally to her. Saki admitted she'd rather he just talk casually, since she didn't think of herself as someone worth all that respect. Yuta agreed and dropped the politeness, telling him, "Let's go to my room and have some fun." Sorry guys, he wants to be helpful, so he offered to assist with her unpacking, and she let him. They ended up spending hours setting up her things until Yuta accidentally tripped, causing a small commotion. When Taichi and Akiko rushed in to check, they caught Yuta freaking out because he had accidentally grabbed one of Saki's plot armor, leaving everyone laughing at his flustered reaction. But guys, Yuta is thinking first mission is completed.
Lord have mercy. We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused. North Philadelphia, Queens is looking good.
Sometime later, Yuta casually asked Saki if she happened to study at Suisei Academy. When she nodded, he admitted he went there too. Yuta quickly promised that he wouldn't act like they knew each other at school, and Saki shrugged, saying it didn't matter to her anyway. Still, she mentioned it would probably be easier for him if they kept that kind of distance. Their chat ended when Yuta got a call from his coworker, Shiori. Once he got to work, Shiori bombarded him with questions about Saki like, "Did you clap her?"
Lord have mercy.
After Yuta gave a few short answers, Shiori wondered aloud how he was supposed to treat her as his sister. Yuta simply said, the best way was to just act normal. The next morning, Yuta woke up to his alarm and lay there for a bit, wondering how to get rid of his awkward lonely loser vibes. I think guys, you have the same vibe.
Emotional damage!
After slipping into his school uniform, he walked out to the living room and spotted Saki already in her uniform, casually preparing breakfast. He greeted her and asked if she slept well. She nodded with a small smile, thanking him for drawing fresh bath water for her the night before. Before leaving for school, Saki mentioned that he didn't need to prepare fresh bath water again that night since it would just waste water, and then she headed out. Later at school, a group of students were passing through the hallway, chatting about new adult collection, while Yuta was up on the rooftop, quietly watching Saki sitting alone on a bench in the courtyard. That's when his friend Tomokazu showed up. Tomokazu teased him, saying it wasn't a good idea to get involved in someone else's love life. Yuta laughed it off, saying a girl like Saki was way out of his league anyway. But Tomokazu shook his head and said Yuta had it all wrong. That being with someone like her would actually hurt his image. I think guys, this type of friend is stopping us to getting a girl. Confused, Yuta pressed for an answer, and Tomokazu explained there were insane rumors going around school, claiming Saki has a OnlyFans account and hanging out with lots of guys. Tomokazu told Yuta that people swore they'd seen Saki walking out of the love hotels. Yuta frowned, pointing out that Tomokazu usually wasn't the type to fall for gossip. But Tomokazu explained further when a guy from the baseball team confessed to Saki She rejected him by saying she was just as bad as the rumors made her out to be and had no plans of dating anyone. Yuta figured the guy was just salty about being turned down, but Tomokazu added that he'd heard the same thing from members of other clubs too. Changing the subject, Tomokazu teased Yuta about suddenly having a new sister, but before Yuta could respond, the school bell rang and they headed to class. Later, during P.E., Yuta found Saki sitting off to the side and asked if she was skipping out. She raised an eyebrow, asking why he was even bothering to talk to her, and Yuta explained that he couldn't help worrying when he saw someone cutting class. Saki smirked, saying he sounded like some overprotective big brother. Yuta quickly assured her he wasn't trying to lecture her, then asked why she chose tennis. Saki said it was partly because her classmate Maya had joined, though that wasn't the only reason. When Yuta asked if Maya was her friend, Saki answered yes, but added that Maya was basically friendly with everyone. She then turned the question back on him, and Yuta admitted he picked tennis because he didn't feel like he was respected much at school. Saki chuckled and said her real reason was just as lame. She avoided team sports so she could stay a total loner. Curious, Yuta asked if she was struggling to fit in with her class. She looked at him and asked if that surprised him. Yuta confessed he always thought someone like her would naturally be at the center of attention. Saki replied that she preferred the quiet, since being left alone gave her more time for herself. When Yuta spotted a pair of earphones peeking out from Saki's pocket, he casually asked if she usually listened to music when she wanted time to herself. She nodded, admitting that she did. Later that evening, when Yuta came back from his part-time job, Akiko welcomed him home and mentioned she had already prepared dinner. Yuta quickly apologized for letting her go through all that trouble after finishing her own shift, but Akiko reassured him, saying it wasn't really that tiring, since she actually worked as a bartender. Much later that night, Yuta was studying in his room when Saki suddenly showed up at his door. "I think guys she want a lollipop." "Sorry guys, I mean." She asked how he managed to balance both school and work so easily. Yuta answered that it wasn't anything unusual. Then, out of nowhere, she asked if he knew of any simple part-time jobs that paid really well, something like 10 yen or more for just an hour or two. Yuta shook his head, saying no regular job could pay that much, but his eyes widened when Saki calmly remarked that she might just keep selling herself, adding that she'd once read in a book that kind of work was the quickest way to earn serious money. Yuta then asked if she could really say things like that in front of her mom. Saki shrugged and said her mom would probably just praise her for acting like an adult. She then flipped the question back, asking if Teichi would be just as happy to hear Yuta was selling himself. When Yuta, confused, asked why she thought that, Saki reminded him he'd mentioned having a job the night before. Realizing the mix-up, he apologized for the misunderstanding they had at dinner. Saki went on to explain that the reason she dressed the way she did was to toughen herself up for society. She talked about how women get judged no matter how they choose to live, and said her style was her first step in carving out an identity at school and pushing herself to do well in her studies. When Yuta asked if all that effort wasn't exhausting, Saki admitted it was, but added that it felt worth it if it meant proving all the haters wrong. Saki then pointed out that Yuta was just like her, since he also wanted to live on his own terms. Yuta asked if that meant she was planning to find a job so she could be independent too, and she admitted he was right before quietly apologizing. After dinner, Yuta told her he'd ask one of his coworkers for suggestions on part-time jobs. Saki thanked him but quickly added that she didn't want to rely on him for everything, so they came up with a little deal. Saki would make him miso soup every day if he helped her look for work. The following morning, Saki surprised Yuta by preparing breakfast. When he asked why she was suddenly doing that, she casually explained it was just an extra part of the agreement they made the night before. Later that day, Yuta mentioned to Shiori that he planned on living on his own once high school was over. Shiori gently told him that it was fine to lean on others when things got too tough, and he didn't always have to shoulder everything alone. That evening at dinner, Yuta shared Shiori's advice with Saki. She admitted Shiori had a point, but still insisted she wanted to live life independently. When Yuta asked about relying on their parents, Saki said they were reliable people, but then added that things might have been easier if Yuta himself were the kind of person who was irresponsible. The next morning, on his way to school, Yuta spotted Saki stepping straight into the path of most wanted anime villain all time, Truck-kun. His heart nearly stopped as he sprinted forward, desperately trying to pull her out of the way. Back at school, Yuta watched Saki playing tennis with Maya while recalling how upset he had been when she recklessly put herself in danger. Later that night in the shower, when he is playing with his joystick in the bathroom, His thoughts wandered to what Saki once said about how women constantly face their own struggles. When he stepped out, he was caught off guard to see Maya sitting comfortably next to Saki in the living room. The following day, Yuta lay on his bed, thinking in his dreams, fifth round is still remained. When he wake up, remembering how cheerful Maya had been when she greeted him at home. When he went to the living room, Saki apologized, explaining that Maya wanted to see her new house, so she invited her over. She also admitted that she told Maya about them being step-siblings and that Maya had even noticed the times Yuta secretly spoke with her. Embarrassed, Yuta apologized for not being more cautious, and that's when Saki suggested they exchange phone numbers. The next morning, Yuta overheard Saki having a lively chat with Akiko while they planned breakfast. At the table, Yuta noticed the rolled omelets tasted much better than usual. Taichi agreed, saying the flavor was incredible. Saki revealed that the secret was a broth called white dashi. Akiko teased that Saki should make it for Yuta since she knew the recipe, but Saki admitted she couldn't get hers as fluffy as Akiko's. Yuta added that he liked fried eggs too, so Saki promised to make some for him later, which made both parents smile. Later on, while Yuta was doing the dishes, he offered to throw Akiko's clothes into the laundry, but she waved him off with a smile, saying she'd gladly take care of all the washing herself. When it was time to leave for class, Yuta grabbed his umbrella, and to his surprise, Saki asked if she could tag along with him. While they walked, she suddenly joked about thinking Yuta might be into dressing like a girl. Yuta quickly denied it, saying he had no such interest. Guys, I think he is only interested in clapping. Realizing she went too far, Saki apologized, and they ended up talking seriously about how people often act on impulse without even thinking. When they reached a bridge, Yuta told her she wasn't the kind of person who failed to reflect on her own actions. Leaning closer, Saki whispered that he seemed to understand her far too well. After school, Yuta stopped by her room, but instead of finding her, he noticed her pink plot armor drying on the rack. Just then, Saki appeared behind him, making him jump. Flustered, he excused himself and mentioned he had a shift to get to. Later that evening, Yuta dozed off at his desk, only to wake up to a text from Saki asking if he had been staring at her pink armor. When they met again, she teased him about how startled he looked when she caught him glancing at her things, then asked if he ran off because he thought she'd accuse him of trying to take them. Yuta admitted she had a point, and Saki replied that it felt a little unfair to him before passing him a cup of hot cocoa. As he accepted it, she remarked that this made them even, then added that his reaction to seeing her pink armor was probably just male instinct. She told him she didn't see him as the kind of person who ignored his own mistakes. Yuta said it was reassuring to hear that, but Saki playfully asked if her pink armor had been tempting enough to catch his attention. When he denied it, she smirked and asked if he ever thought about stealing them. Yuta admitted that urges like that could exist, but made it clear he'd never act on them. He explained that wanting something and actually doing it were two very different things. Saki agreed, then casually mentioned she had already eaten and taken her bath before heading off to her room. The following day, Yuta was sitting near the tennis court during practice when Maya unexpectedly walked over and asked why Saki was acting strangely. Later on, Yuta sent Saki a message, asking if something had happened to upset her. She didn't reply until hours later, saying that nothing was wrong. That evening at dinner, the atmosphere between them was heavy, and neither spoke for a while until Yuta finally apologized for still not finding her a well-paying job. Saki reassured him she hadn't expected results so quickly, but Yuta admitted he felt guilty that she was cooking for him without getting anything in return. He told her to depend on him if she ever needed help. After dinner, Saki went to take her bath while Yuta lay on his bed, reading the latest manga edition. Suddenly, the light in his room went out. Saki had switched it off from outside. "I think, guys, maybe we are going to see a clapping scene." She then walked in, removing the last piece of plot armor she had, and climbed onto his bed. Holding his face in her hands, she asked him in a low voice if he was willing to pay to have her body. Saki's thoughts slipped into diary mode as she replayed everything that had happened with Yuta since the day they met. She realized how calm and considerate he always was, and it struck her that he was the first person who seemed to truly get her without effort. Looking back on their conversations, she noticed that almost every idea Yuta had was something she could completely relate to, which made being around him feel natural. But that closeness also scared her. She began to think Yuta might actually be dangerous because he understood her too well. Her train of thought was broken when Yuta bluntly said she was acting like the kind of girl he disliked. He reminded her that she never wanted to be seen as someone who used her looks to manipulate others. She tried to explain she only acted that way because he understood her so deeply, but Yuta stopped her, saying this wasn't about him, it was about her. Embarrassed, she apologized. Afterward, she opened up about her past, how her father used to be kind, but changed after his company went under. Her mother worked harder to support them, but her dad only grew resentful, accusing her of luring customers with her body. Saki admitted it was unfair for him to take out his anger on her mom. Yuta agreed, then revealed his own family issues. He said that after his mother cheated on Taichi, he became suspicious of women for a long time. Saki realized Yuta had struggled with his dad's problems too. She pointed out they shared a lot of painful baggage, and Yuta told her that even with those broken pieces, they could still live together as brother and sister. Yuta jokingly told her to start calling him Big Bro, which made Saki laugh before she stepped out of his room. Later, as she thought about their time together, she realized her feelings for him were slowly changing. A few days later, Yuta was walking home from school, reflecting on how he and Saki weren't true siblings. They had no blood ties and almost no history together. Still, after living under the same roof for a month, he felt she wasn't a stranger anymore, though he struggled to define what they were. When he arrived home, Saki hurried over, asking him to tutor her in modern literature. Curious, Yuta asked about her score. She admitted she got a 38 and explained that while she wasn't good at the subject, she never thought she'd fail. Yuta wondered why, since she excelled in other areas. Saki said it was because she couldn't really grasp how the characters and stories felt. Yuta was surprised, pointing out she always seemed considerate and tried to understand him in their daily life. But Saki corrected him, saying compromise exists because people don't truly understand one another. Yuta admitted she had a point. She then worried that failing again would mean summer makeup lessons, adding that she also planned to work during break. Yuta apologized for not finding her a job yet, but Saki assured him she didn't blame him and actually felt guilty for leaning on him too much. Yuta agreed to tutor Saki in modern literature, and she thanked him. As they studied, he noticed she did fine on essay questions, but left the novel-based ones blank. He asked if she ran out of time or had trouble with stories. She admitted it was the latter, though it hurt a little that he caught her weakness so quickly. Yuta apologized for being blunt, and she told him she knew he was only saying it to help. He pointed out her biggest struggle was with a novel called Saniro, which centered on the difficulty of loving freely. Yuta said, people today might even understand parts of it better than readers did when it was first written. Curious, Saki asked which parts, and he told her to explain what confused her. She admitted she didn't understand what Saniro or Mo were thinking, or why they made certain choices. Yuta explained that Saniro loved Mo, and when she asked if he meant romantically, he confirmed it. He even highlighted the scenes where Saniro got jealous of other men talking to her. Saki questioned why Saniro didn't just tell Mo directly. Yuta guessed it was too difficult for him to confess openly. Saki said she couldn't relate to people who hid their feelings, so Yuta asked her to imagine a moment where emotions clouded her judgment, like falling in love for the first time. She calmly replied she had no experience with romance. When she turned the question back, Yuta admitted he was also single. They concluded their poor grades had nothing to do with love experience. Yuta told her instead of empathizing, they should treat the story like a logic problem. Since she scored well in history, he suggested connecting the story with its historical background. Saki said her grades were mostly from memorization, but Yuta encouraged her to link that knowledge with the novel. She agreed it was a good approach. When she asked if he thought she'd pass the retest, Yuta confidently said yes, making her smile as she promised to give it her all. After hours of studying, Yuta told Saki she'd improved a lot and just needed to master the novels for an easy retest. She thanked him, calling him a good teacher, before heading off. The next morning, Yuta found Saki already reviewing in the living room. When she tried to get up to make his breakfast, he told her to stay focused and said he'd just grab some toast. Saki reminded him of her promise to cook for him, but Yuta insisted that passing her retest came first. She smiled and thanked him again. At school, Yuta was distracted by watching anime recap time video when Maya showed up, cheerfully greeting him. She teased him by calling him Big Bro, which he asked her to stop. Instead, she began using different variations of the same nickname, irritating him even more. Laughing, Maya said she was just letting out stress after finishing her exams. When Yuta asked if she had any retests, she proudly said she never failed one. She even bragged that her total across all 9 subjects was 808 points. Yuta was floored, and she added that she'd kept nearly a 90% average throughout school, ranking at the top of her class. Yuta asked Maya if she knew a way to make studying easier for Saki, and Maya mentioned that she usually listened to background music while reviewing. As they parted, she cheerfully told him he really was like a good older brother. Later that day at work, Yuda's scatterbrained coworker Shiori teased him as usual. Before closing, he asked her what kind of music might help someone concentrate. She gave him a few suggestions, and even played samples through her wireless earbuds. That evening at dinner, Yuda let Saki listen to the playlist. She admitted it sounded nice, so he explained that Shiori had recommended it after he asked for study tips. He even told Saki how absent-minded Shiori could be. Yuda said he wanted to do this as a way of returning the favors she'd given him. Saki thanked him and promised to use the music later that night while studying. The next morning, Yuda sat at the table with his dad while Akiko brought out breakfast. Noticing the meal looked plainer than usual, he asked why. Akiko explained that Saki was still asleep. When Yuda mentioned it was unusual for her, Akiko said it was because she'd been up all night studying. She worried aloud that Saki might catch a cold from leaving the air conditioner on while sleeping uncovered. Later at work, Shiori asked Yuda if they had any more copies of a certain book. He checked and told her only one was left, which made her sigh in disappointment since the supplier hadn't delivered. Looking at the cover, Yuda noticed it had been made into a movie, so he began reading the synopsis out loud to her. The book's story was about a boy who, every week at midnight, saw a girl in the park carrying an old violin while men from her past chased her. As he uncovered the violin's secrets, the boy joined her on a strange journey through space and time. After reading the summary aloud, Yuda suggested they display the book face out, and Shiori agreed. Curious, he asked if the film version was still in theaters. Shiori said it would end the next day, replaced by Marvel releases, then invited him to the late show since they both finished work at 8. Yuda casually agreed, saying he'd tell his parents later. As they left, Shiori teased him, asking if there was someone besides his parents he needed to update about their outing. Yuda looked confused until she clarified she meant Saki, who might worry if he stayed out. Yuda brushed it off, insisting Saki wouldn't be concerned. At the cinema, Yuda asked what drink she wanted, and Shiori chose a Pepsi.
Senpai.
8. He laughed at how basic it was, but when he asked about flavoring, she picked chocolate. But guys, he say for popcorn. Then she says take caramel. Once inside, Yuda complained the popcorn was oversized. Shiori explained she bought it for both of them. He admitted he didn't usually snack during movies, but when she begged him to give some extra butter, sorry guys, I mean she says eat it. He eventually gave in and ate some while they watched together. The movie showed a demi-human boy running through town with a heavy bag, only to trip by a fence and spill food all over himself. A glowing demi-human girl appeared, smiling as she handed him her guitar, and begged him to protect it from men chasing her. The boy was puzzled until she revealed she only had 6 months left to live. Before she could explain further, hat-wearing pursuers arrived, forcing them to flee together. As they ran, she said her violin was ancient and carried the same scent as those chasing it. They eventually reached a cabin, where she lay on a bed while the boy, crying, confessed he wanted to travel with her to a special place. When he held out his hand, she clasped it, and from the audience, Yuda noticed Shiori was completely absorbed in the scene. After the movie, they walked down the road and stopped by a vending machine, where Shiori bought him a soda. When he drank it, she teased him before seriously admitting he was always kind to her. Then she jokingly copied the film's heroine, saying she also had 6 months left. Yuda called her useless baddie, but played along, asking her to leave with him just like the boy did. His sudden sincerity overwhelmed her, leaving Shiori blushing hard. They talked more about the film before parting ways. At her street, Yuda thanked her again for the study music tip, and she asked him to pass her regards to Saki. As Shiori drove off, her imagination drifted to a scene of her and a boy who looked like Yuda watching her play violin in the snow, before he joined in, and the two laughed joyfully together as the flakes kept falling. The next morning at breakfast, Yuda told Saki he had covered her with a blanket while she slept so she wouldn't get sick before her retest. When she asked about the movie he watched, he said it was called A Rift in the Blue Night, and that it was worth seeing. He recommended it, but Saki said she'd wait until after her test, or maybe read the novel since it might help improve her literature score. Then, out of nowhere, she asked if he was dating Shiori. Yuda quickly denied it, saying she was just a coworker who loved chatting about books. Hearing that, Saki said she might start reading more herself, since he enjoyed them so much. Yuda liked the idea, but told her to focus on the retest first. Later that day at work, while helping Shiori restock, Yuda was shocked to spot Saki browsing the store. Once she realized who she was, Shiori eagerly introduced herself and complimented Saki nonstop. Saki explained she was looking for a study guide along with the book version of the movie. Shiori suggested watching the film, but Yuda immediately cut her off, sparking a back and forth between them that left Saki stunned. Afterward, Yuta grabbed a few recommendations for Saki and showed her where the study guides were. When Saki brought everything to the counter, Shiori carefully wrapped the books and sent her off with a polite smile. Once she left, Shiori remarked that Saki looked cute and teased Yuta, saying she might be perfect for him. Yuta dismissed the idea, insisting she was just his stepsis, Tae. But Saki, overhearing their conversation from behind the wall, silently walked away after hearing his words. A few days later, Tomokazu caught Yuta on the school rooftop and mentioned hearing rumors that he and Saki were getting close. Yuta brushed it off, saying they were only studying together, but Tomokazu grinned and added that someone overheard her calling him Oni-chan. Yuta was speechless, and Tomokazu proudly offered to use his love guru skills to support him if anything happened. After school, Yuta was heading home when Maya showed up with Saki and insisted on tagging along. On the walk, Saki apologized, explaining she'd invited Maya to help her with studying. Yuta asked Maya if walking with them felt awkward, but she said she didn't mind at all. Once they got home, Maya immediately made herself comfortable, leaving Saki apologizing for the noise.
Oh, sorry.
Yuta told her it was fine and wished them luck before heading to his room. Later that evening, while Maya and Saki studied in the living room, Yuta walked in and switched on the lights. Saki offered to start cooking, but Yuta told her to keep studying and said he'd take care of dinner. Grateful, Saki thanked him. Hearing this, Maya teased that Yuta was giving off husband vibes. The truth, though, was that Yuta had no cooking skills. Struggling with the online recipes, he gave up and just started making rice. When Maya wandered into the kitchen, she asked if he was having trouble. Embarrassed, Yuta admitted he couldn't follow the instruction. Laughing, Maya told Saki to keep reviewing while she helped hopeless loser in the kitchen. Saki felt it might be asking too much, but Maya brushed it off, saying she wanted to show off her future wife's skills. Yuta handed her the recipes on his phone, and together they pulled vegetables from the fridge. She showed him how to chop them and then guided him through rolling meatballs. While Saki kept studying in the living room, Maya watched as Yuta boiled everything. Out of nowhere, Maya asked if he and Saki had some sort of special relationship. Yuta quickly said that would only cause problems. Maya countered by pointing out they weren't blood related and were practically strangers until recently. When Yuta asked why she was so curious, she explained that Saki seemed different ever since meeting him. To prove her point, she mentioned how Saki had been wearing perfume more often. Maya asked if he noticed, and Yuta admitted he hadn't. Relieved, Maya laughed that it would have been creepy if he said yes. She went on to explain that last year, Saki never used perfume, just wet wipes after sweating. So she figured Saki had changed the habit because there might be someone special in her life. Yuta joked that it was only natural for Saki to think about him, which made Maya perk up, but he quickly clarified he didn't mean it romantically. He explained that it was normal to care about personal scent when living with the opposite gender. Maya then pointed out that Saki was staring at him. When Yuta noticed her watching, he muttered that she probably overheard everything thanks to Maya's boombox mouth. He warned Maya that pushing her with love questions would only annoy her, but Maya laughed, saying it was already too late. Their exchange ended when the cooker beeped, signaling the food was done. Saki tried the meal and praised it, saying it tasted great. Yuta felt relieved and happy she enjoyed it. She pointed out he even made sweet and sour pork just for her, then thanked him sincerely. When Yuta asked about her studying, Saki said his lessons helped her handle Maya's practice questions more easily. Though Maya called her methods inefficient, Yuta admitted the approach wasn't the most straightforward, but Saki brushed it off, saying it still worked for her. She confidently promised she'd do best on the test. Yuta encouraged her by saying he was cheering her on, and Saki smiled warmly as she thanked him. After school, Yuta had a rough time at work, fumbling more than usual. During his break, Shiori noticed and asked if he was okay, saying she'd never seen him mess up that badly before. Yuta apologized and told her he was heading home. Back at the house, he looked around for Saki, but couldn't find her anywhere. Then he noticed laundry still outside, already getting soaked by the rain. He rushed out to grab it, folding the wet clothes as the TV blared news about the storm lasting through the night and causing accidents on the highway. Growing worried, Yuta texted Saki, asking if she was alright and where she was. Minutes passed with no reply, and memories of her thanking him for his help filled his mind. Panicked, he grabbed 2 umbrellas and ran out into the storm to look for her. Yuta dashed through the hallway and bumped into Saki at the elevator. When she asked where he was headed, he explained he'd been searching for her, worried she might be crying in the rain over another failed test. Saki apologized for making him anxious and proudly showed him her result, 94 out of 100. She admitted she wasn't satisfied since it didn't beat his 96, and explained she had gone to another store to buy groceries as a way of thanking him. Yuta told her there was no need since what they had was just a fair exchange, but Saki listed all the things he had done for her, like making her dinner the night before, and promised to cook a proper meal for him in return. She added that she wanted him to lean on her at home, the way he relied on Shiori at work. Yuta smiled and agreed, letting her treat him as they walked home together. When summer vacation started, Yuta said goodbye to Tomokazu at school. Later at work, he was stunned to see Saki there for a job interview, something his boss confirmed. Not long after, Saki found herself remembering the days when she struggled with literature. Back then, she couldn't understand why people were so troubled about not connecting with each other. She thought it made her strange, but she admitted she found hope again because of Yuta. Saki remembered how grateful she felt when Yuta recommended music to help her concentrate on studying. But as nights passed, she began having restless thoughts about all the time he spent with Shiori at work. She knew it wasn't right to write such feelings in her diary. Yet she continued anyway, because it gave her a strange sense of relief. One night, when Yuta came home late without notice, she grew jealous, realizing he had been with Shiori. At the same time, she hated herself for feeling that way, since she barely knew anything about Shiori. Hoping to greet Yuta when he returned, she studied in the living room instead of her room, but eventually dozed off before he arrived. When she woke, she found a blanket over her shoulders, and that simple act eased the anxious thoughts she had carried the night before. Later, when she visited the bookstore where Yuta worked, she thought Shiori was attractive, mature, and had a kind of cute charm qualities that made her seem like a perfect match for him. Seeing a help wanted sign on the wall, Saki decided to apply for the position instead of searching for shortcuts. On her way home in the elevator, she wondered if Yuta would mind her trying to work at the same place. The day before her retest, she felt thankful to both Yuta and Maya for helping her, and even enjoyed the sweet and sour pork Yuta made that evening. After passing the retest, she wasn't surprised, knowing how hard Yuta and Maya had supported her, and she felt excited that she could now spend summer vacation freely. She planned to continue studying a little each day, while saving money from work. While looking at the bookstore's poster again, someone approached, and she immediately said she was interested. She hadn't practiced interview questions at home because she thought it would feel awkward with Yuta nearby, and she worried about what she'd say if he asked why she wanted to work there. That evening in the elevator, she avoided telling him that the real reason she was late was because she had been preparing for the interview. Instead, she lied, saying she had gone to a convenience store and that her phone had died, which was why she hadn't seen his messages. The more she covered it up, the heavier the doubt grew in her heart. She realized she was scared of the emotions she was carrying. There was only one word to describe them, but she hesitated to write it in her diary, afraid of admitting she was turning into a character from a romance novel. After passing the interview smoothly, she knew she would eventually have to tell Yuta the truth. Even though the thought frightened her, she also understood that doing so would give her peace of mind. She believed that learning more about Yuta and even about Shiori would help clear her confusion. Saki wondered why she had given Yuta so much power over her choices, but then realized she had trapped herself by tying her feelings to him. It was both embarrassing and a little funny, so she promised herself that no one would ever read the diary she was writing. Saki decided it was safest to tuck her diary into the back of a drawer and lock it away. She asked herself to describe the uneasy feeling inside her with a single word. In the present, Yuta and the family sat at the dining table, and he thanked Saki for the tasty breakfast she had made. Akiko teased them, asking if they avoided using each other's first names out of embarrassment. Both Yuta and Saki replied that it simply didn't feel natural to use given names. When Akiko asked if they had work later, Yuta said they planned to leave around noon. Teichi then brought up that they hadn't gone anywhere fun all summer. He pointed out that once they became third years, exams would take over, and added that their friends were probably missing them. Yuta admitted he didn't have many friends, and Saki said she didn't have plans with hers either. Later, Saki visited Yuta in his room and admitted she and Maya weren't close enough to spend the break together. Yuta reminded her that Maya had visited multiple times, but Saki explained it was mostly out of curiosity about him, and that she had invited her on the last occasion. She added that she and Maya usually gave each other space, unless they decided to hang out. Yuta agreed, saying he handled his friendships in much the same way. At the bookstore, Shiori noticed Saki struggling with her tasks and asked Yuta to step in. When he helped her out, Yuta quickly found the book she'd been searching for, leaving Saki jokingly wondering if he was some kind of magician. On the way back, Yuta explained how he tracked it down and added that Shiori would have located it even faster. The next day, Taichi was fixing the air conditioner in the living room. When Yuta asked why Saki was still in her room, Akiko explained that she didn't handle heat well and recalled how she used to cry for ice cream as a little kid. A few hours later, Yuta met Tomokazu at a diner, where Tomokazu asked if he was heading to the pool with Saki and Maya. When Yuta said he hadn't heard anything about it, Tomokazu guessed they'd probably invite him soon. That evening after work, Yuta walked home with Saki and mentioned how the staff praised her for being a quick learner. Eventually, he asked if he was included in the pool plans she and Maya were making. When she asked if he wanted to join, Yuta admitted he'd feel out of place, surrounded by cheerful people. She told him not to push himself and revealed she wasn't planning to go either. When they returned home, Saki went to her room and finally put a name to the feelings troubling her jealousy. A few days later, while walking home from school, she thought back to childhood days when she begged Akiko for ice cream. Akiko used to tell her snacking at noon would ruin her appetite for dinner. When Saki kept demanding it, Akiko teased that they were having beef stew that evening, and Saki quickly changed her mind, saying she'd rather have dinner. Akiko promised she'd buy her ice cream another time. As they continued walking, Akiko asked where she wanted to go the following week, and Saki answered the pool. Back in the present, Yuta told Akiko he had cram school that day and mentioned the AC was finally fixed. Akiko was happy, saying Saki could now study comfortably in the living room again. Yuta then asked if Saki disliked being pushed into things she hadn't agreed to. When Akiko asked what he meant, Yuta gave the example of planning something without asking her first, and then inviting her later. Akiko said that didn't sound like something Saki would enjoy, since she preferred being included from the start. Akiko then teasingly asked if Yuta was planning to ask Saki out on a date. He quickly denied it, reminding her Saki was his sister. Yuta explained he only worried because Saki sometimes pushed herself too hard without taking breaks. Akiko wondered aloud if Saki had grown that way because she'd always been busy, saying she was trying to become an adult too quickly. She admitted she regretted not letting her daughter enjoy more carefree years. Akiko asked Yuta to do her a favor, make sure Saki relaxed once in a while. Yuta agreed, but joked she might resent him for it. Smiling, Akiko said not to worry, since she would tell him Saki's favorite thing so he could use it as a way to make peace if needed. Later, Yuta went to Saki's room and tried to bring up Maya's pool gathering. Before he could finish, Saki cut him off, saying she wasn't going because she didn't have time. Yuta replied that he planned on going and asked for Maya's contact info, but Saki refused, saying it was rude to hand out someone's number without permission. She promised to ask Maya herself and let him know later. While Yuta was at cram school, a girl named Kaho noticed his eraser drop to the floor and handed it back to him. After class, Yuta ran into Shiori on the way home, and the two chatted cheerfully until they bumped into Saki, who greeted them with a gentle smile. Later, at the bookstore, Yuta asked Saki once more for Maya's contact information, but she firmly refused again. After work, Yuta got a text from Saki telling him to head home without her since she planned on shopping that evening. On his walk back, he thought about their original promise not to expect anything from each other and remembered the moment Saki first told him Maya was her friend. When Yuta arrived home, he checked the fridge and found some mixed rice. Just then, Saki came in and gave him instructions on how to warm it up in the microwave. Yuta thanked her, then asked if she wanted some iced coffee, which she happily accepted. While preparing it, he casually brought up Maya's contact again, saying she was probably waiting for his response about the pool event. This time, Saki reluctantly agreed to share the number, but Yuta admitted he wasn't really interested in going alone or even getting the contact. What he wanted was for Saki to come with him. When she didn't understand, he confessed that he'd only pretended to want to go to make her jealous. He asked again if she wanted to go and added that Akiko had told him how much she loved visiting pools when she was younger. Yuta pointed out that she acted differently whenever Maya's name came up, so he assumed she'd want to tag along. Saki insisted she had no time because of studying, and when Yuta suggested she relax, she snapped and shouted that she didn't need a break. Yuta calmly told her he was worried, reminding her that if she kept pushing non-stop, she'd eventually collapse. He urged her to rest, even if she was in a rush to live independently. Without another word, Saki handed him a note with Maya's number and left the room. The next morning, Yuta found Saki in the living room. She admitted she had only gone to bed around 6 a.m., and he told her she needed more sleep. When she realized the time, she panicked about not making breakfast for Taichi, but Yuta explained that their father had already eaten bread from the fridge. She offered to cook something for Yuta instead, but he stopped her and told her to listen first. He reminded her of their first day together, when he said they needed to ease into things smoothly, and explained that he didn't want her cooking while exhausted. Saki argued it was her responsibility, but Yuta firmly told her that her only task that day was to rest. He sat her down and made toast with hot milk for them both. When he served it, Saki smiled as she tasted how good it was. As she stirred her milk, she noticed the whipped cream on top and couldn't help but smile again before drinking it. After finishing her drink, Saki agreed to go to the pool with Yuta, but pointed out a problem: the party was scheduled on one of their work days. Yuta assured her they could make it work by swapping shifts with coworkers. As they walked out together, Saki admitted she'd been in a bad mood the day before when she saw him walking with Shiori. She asked if the two of them were dating. When Yuta denied it, he asked why she was curious, but she only said she didn't know. A little later, Yuta questioned why he even brought his bike along for their walk, and Saki teased that he could be pretty absent-minded sometimes. A few days later, Saki sat staring at her fish tank, reflecting on how much she wanted to understand Yuta better. She realized she was drawn to him and began replaying her memories. She thought about how quickly he located a book she had struggled to find for over 10 minutes and remembered him saying Shiori would have done it faster, which left her frustrated at her own shortcomings. She recalled how he had comforted her the next day and reminded her about Maya's pool plan. That day stuck in her mind because she not only snapped at him but also let jealous thoughts take over when she saw him with Shiori, something she hated facing. Saki wondered if Yuta preferred girls with long hair like Shiori, then remembered she had long hair herself. Later that night, when Yuta once again brought up Maya's pool party, she questioned why he cared so much about something that seemed so trivial. For her, studying was more important, and she felt she didn't have time for fun. But when she saw the indifferent expression on his face, she recognized it. It was the same look her mother once wore when she turned down an invitation to the beach. Saki drifted into a daydream, imagining herself and Yuta enjoying a carefree day at the beach while their parents watched from nearby. The thought filled her with a warm, comforting feeling, and it was that same emotion that pushed her to finally decide to join Yuta at the pool. She also recalled a memory from the past when Akiko had taken her to the zoo, where she marveled at all the different kinds of animals kept inside the cages. Back then, Akiko had bought Saki a hippo doll as a souvenir from the zoo. In the present, Saki tried to recall the soft texture of that toy she once treasured. Her thoughts then shifted to how poor she had always been at dealing with friends, never good at reading the room. But during the pool trip, with Yuta's help, she managed to blend in naturally. She noticed how easily he interacted with others, how he spoke up whenever something bothered him, and realized that was part of why she found herself drawn to him. At the pool, Saki watched everyone enjoying themselves, but her eyes stayed on Yuta. He was always making sure others had fun, and she thought it was cool. What made her proud was knowing she was the only one who truly understood that side of him. Sitting beside him at the pool's edge, she asked if he was nervous about jumping in. Yuta admitted he didn't want to mess up in front of everyone, since it was a team game. Saki told him she admired how he supported people quietly from the background. Embarrassed, Yuta told her to stop praising him so much, and she smiled, saying she was finished. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Saki got up, saying she was going for another swim. Yuta's gaze followed her, unable to look away as she laughed and splashed with their friends. Watching her playful side, he remembered every moment they had shared and realized he had fallen for her. On the way home, Yuta stared out the window, reflecting on how he had never been good with girls. His parents' past had left him cynical about relationships between men and women, which was why he had never truly fallen for anyone. Now, though, he wondered why he was suddenly in love with Saki, even though she was his stepsister. On the way home, Saki mentioned that Yuta seemed close with Maya. He explained that he had only thanked her for handling everything so well during the trip. When Yuta asked if Saki enjoyed herself, she admitted she did and said it was all thanks to him. She told him it had been ages since she'd had fun swimming and thanked him for convincing her to come. Yuta downplayed it, saying he hadn't done much. Just as he was about to confess his feelings, fireworks suddenly lit up the sky. As they watched the colorful display, Saki told him she admired how dependable he was and called him cool before addressing him as big brother for the first time. She added that he had become someone she could always count on, like real family. Yuta smiled at her words, but felt a sting when she admitted it sounded a little strange. As they continued walking, Yuta felt relieved he hadn't confessed. Hearing her call him big brother made him realize that her warmth came from seeing him as family, and he felt foolish for wanting more. At the street corner, Yuta wondered how he should act once they got home, while Saki quietly asked herself if she could truly reject him if he ever confessed. The next morning, Akiko told Saki she had the day off from work. When Saki asked about Yuata, Akiko said he was still asleep. Excited, Akiko noted that since both of them were free, They could spend the day together as a family. As Saki walked down the hall, she decided to lock away her feelings for Yuata, unwilling to risk their parents' happiness or make things harder for him. In her mind, she tossed away the key to the drawer, holding her diary. When Yuta finally woke up, Taichi teased him for skipping cram school, while Akiko thanked him for taking Saki to the pool. Akiko said she was glad to have him as her little brother and then showed him Saki's favorite thing on her phone. But Yuta could barely register what was on the screen. His attention was stolen by Saki, who walked into the living room with a fresh hairstyle, smiling as she called him Big Brother once more. Saki found herself revisiting the memories she had written down in her diary, but afterward she made a firm decision. She would never write her true feelings again. From now on, she would simply replay those thoughts in her head while continuing life as Yuta's stepsister. A few days later, Maya and some classmates were gathered in the room, chatting about plans for an upcoming event. Once the discussion ended, Maya turned to Saki and invited her to join them for karaoke with a few others. Saki politely declined, saying she had errands to take care of. Hearing this, a classmate comforted Shinju, who had been hoping to confess during the karaoke outing. As Saki walked home, she reflected that a stepbrother was little more than a stranger, someone who suddenly became family after moving in together. When she got home, she found Akiko in the living room. Akiko served her tea and casually asked how things were going with Yuta at school. Saki answered that everything was fine since they were in different classes. Then she asked why Akiko was asking such questions, instead of bringing up the parent-teacher meeting as she had planned. Akiko admitted she didn't want to trouble Taichi because of his busy schedule, so she had been thinking about attending both meetings herself. But her bar job made it hard to take multiple days off, and she worried that attending back-to-back would make their sibling relationship obvious to other students. Just then, Yuta came home. Akiko said his timing was perfect since they had just been discussing his meeting. She explained her plan to attend both and suggested it would be easier if he and Saki scheduled theirs on separate days. That way, their step-sibling connection would remain private. Yuta pointed out that Akiko was just as busy as their father, but she brushed it off, insisting she would manage, and told them not to worry before heading off to work. Not long after, Saki also left, telling Yuta she was going to her part-time job. Sitting at her desk later, she remembered Akiko's words how one of the reasons she wanted to attend Yuta's parent-teacher meeting was because she felt he still hadn't fully accepted her as a mother. Later that evening, Saki came home to find Yuta finishing up dinner. An awkward silence lingered until both of them mentioned the parent-teacher meeting at the same time. Yuta suggested they talk over food, and Saki agreed. After eating, she praised his cooking, and Yuta thanked her before steering the topic back to the meetings. Saki admitted she felt it was selfish of them to keep their relationship secret without considering how it affected their parent. Yuta said he personally had no issue with people knowing they were siblings, and Saki agreed. She then reminded him that Akiko's health sometimes suffered when she overworked, and Yuta said he didn't want to make life harder for either of their parents. Together, they decided to hold their meetings on the same day, so Akiko would only have to attend once. Saki suggested they break the news to her together, and Yuta agreed. As they washed dishes side by side, both quietly reminded themselves they had to keep their deeper feelings hidden, because they were family. The next morning, while Yuta was making breakfast, Taichi asked if he was sure about the decision. Yuta explained that he and Saki agreed it wasn't right to keep pretending they weren't siblings. Taichi recalled how Akiko once said she wanted them to feel like a real family, and he told Yuta that if she knew he accepted her as part of his family, it would make her truly happy. Just then, Saki walked in and apologized for not making breakfast, but Taichi reassured her it wasn't necessary. After he left, Saki pointed out to Yuta how happy Akiko had looked when she heard about their choice. Later at school, Yuta told Tomokazu that Saki was his stepsister. Tomokazu immediately apologized for the bad things he had said about her before. Meanwhile, Maya was laughing with friends in class when Shinju suggested they go bowling. Everyone agreed except Saki, who said she planned to study that day. Shinju then suggested turning it into a study session, and Maya offered her house as the spot. The group agreed, and Saki said she was fine with it too. As they walked downstairs together, Yuta watched from a distance, noticing how bright Saki looked as she laughed with her classmates. At work, Shiori asked Yuta if he missed Saki, since they hadn't shared shifts in a while. Yuta brushed it off, saying she was just his little sister. Shiori then invited him to an open campus event at her college, but he declined, noting it was an all-girls school. Just then, he noticed a girl struggling to find a book. When he approached, he realized it was Kaho, the same girl who had returned his eraser during summer class. She introduced herself properly and went on at length about the meaning of her name before walking away. That evening, Saki shared a quiet dinner of miso soup with Teichi. Afterward, as she covered Yuta's food for later, her thoughts drifted back to the time she had spent with him so far. She came to the conclusion that the safest way to keep her emotions under control was to stop doing things for him altogether. But the thought troubled her, if she really cut herself off like that, it might create a wall between them that couldn't be undone. The idea of ending things with regret weighed on her, and she admitted to herself she didn't want to distance herself from Yuta completely. On the morning of the parent-teacher meetings, the family gathered for breakfast. Akiko mentioned she hadn't gotten much sleep the previous night, which led Teichi to advise her to take a nap before the scheduled time. She accepted the suggestion, and Teichi said he'd personally wake her when it was time to leave. Later at school, Yuta ran into Maya in the library and casually mentioned the time of his meeting, which happened to be close to hers. Maya suddenly asked if Yuta had feelings for Saki. He immediately denied it, reminding her that Saki was his stepsister. Maya then teased him by asking if it was alright for her to play matchmaker and set Saki up with another boy who was interested in her. Yuta replied that it wasn't really his place to give or deny permission for that sort of thing. A few hours later, Yuta accompanied Akiko into the school building, chatting lightly on the way to the meeting room. Once there, Akiko promised she would handle it as best as she could. During the conference, Yuta's homeroom teacher praised his effort and said that at the pace he was going, he wouldn't have any trouble getting into a top university in Tokyo. The teacher even assumed that his progress was thanks to Akiko's guidance as a mother, which left her feeling a little uneasy. Before she could respond, Yuta quickly stepped in, agreeing with the teacher and openly expressing gratitude to his mother Akiko for raising him. The teacher then added that Yuta only needed to decide which school he wanted to apply to, and he would give his full approval. Meanwhile, in Saki's classroom, her homeroom teacher admitted that she had been concerned about Saki during the first term because of the ugly rumors that circulated about her. But over time, her perspective changed after seeing how Saki carried herself. She explained that while some teachers had criticized Saki's flashy style and appearance, she herself came to understand that Saki simply wanted to present herself in a way that made her feel confident and beautiful. The teacher reminded Saki that while she could dress however she liked, she should still keep her style within the limits expected of a high school student. Saki nodded, agreeing to tone it down where necessary. The teacher then mentioned how her once troubled language arts grade had turned around during the second term, and asked if she had any colleges in mind. Saki explained that she wanted a school with low tuition that would still help her secure good opportunities after graduation. The teacher recommended Tsukemiya Women's College. Saki remarked that it was a prestigious choice, but the teacher encouraged her, saying with steady effort she could be admitted and that it would be a strong advantage in the job market. She also pointed out that the college was public, meaning the tuition was affordable, which fit exactly what Saki was looking for. Before wrapping up, she told Saki about an open campus event happening that weekend, encouraging her to visit and get a feel for the school. On the way home, Saki told Akiko she was planning to attend the Tsukemiya Open Campus event. Akiko was delighted, happy to see both Saki and Yuta working hard and acting like responsible students. When Saki arrived at the campus event the following day, she ran into Shiori at the reception desk. Shiori was thrilled to see her and, upon learning Saki had come for the sample lecture, offered to give her a tour of the school. Their conversation was soon interrupted by a teacher named Kudu, whom Shiori introduced as the one leading the ethics lecture that day. As she greeted Saki, Kudu studied her closely and immediately guessed that something seemed to be troubling her. With a calm smile, Kudu invited Saki to her office, saying they still had time before the lecture began, and hinting she might have the answers Saki was searching for. Meanwhile, Yuta happened to cross paths with Kaho in the library. She motioned for him to stay quiet, and he quietly sat down in a seat nearby, curious about what she was doing. Inside Kudo's office, the teacher began speaking through a strange little hand puppet, casually mentioning that she'd already heard about Saki's connection to Yuta from Shiori. Acting like a detective, Kudu suggested that Saki might have developed feelings for her stepbrother even though ethics made such a relationship off limits. Shocked, Saki asked how she could possibly know that. Kudu replied that Saki had just given her the confirmation herself with that reaction. Then, staring her straight in the eye, Kudu asked if she was in love with Yuta. Saki tried to insist repeatedly that he was her brother, but eventually admitted, with hesitation, that she wasn't entirely sure about her own feelings. Meanwhile, outside the library, Kaho ran into Yuta and invited him along to the convenience store to grab some food. Back in Kudo's office, Saki laid out her situation in detail. Kudo asked her if she was sure that what she felt wasn't just mistaken for romantic attraction. She pointed out how Saki used fashion as a shield to stand out and then pressed her about the real reason she had chosen that college. Saki admitted she wanted to prove she could take what she had and make herself look beautiful. But deep down, she came because she thought it would help her build the best possible future for herself. Kudo, however, saw straight through her. She said Saki seemed like the kind of girl who hated letting others see her vulnerabilities, someone who fought battles alone while secretly craving approval and love. She explained that this part of her personality made her cling to the rare people who actually understood and supported her. At that same moment, Kaho was telling Yuta about her unusual lifestyle, how she only attended school at night. Unlike others who had judged her for it, Yuta didn't react negatively, and Kaho noted that he had a rare quality of looking at things without bias. Back in the office, Kudo speculated that the reason Saki's feelings for Yuta were so strong was because he was one of the few people who truly saw her for who she was. Unlike the many who had misunderstood her, Kudo advised her to broaden her circle, to meet and talk with different kinds of people until she found someone she naturally felt drawn to. But she also added that if, after making those connections, Saki's heart still leaned toward Yuta, then those feelings should be cherished as genuine. Afterward, Kudo went on to deliver her sample ethics lecture, while Yuta agreed to meet Kaho again for lunch the next day. That evening during dinner, Saki mentioned to Yuta that she had met Shiori and Kaho at the open campus event. Yuta asked if she was seriously considering Tsukemiya, and Saki said she wanted to try. She then asked if he planned to keep attending his study lounge, and Yuta explained that he was meeting a friend for lunch there tomorrow. Saki responded positively, and Yuta thought it was good that they were both finding new connections. It made him feel their relationship was staying safely within the lines of being brother and sister. A few days later, Saki joined a study session with her classmates. As they worked together, she realized that leaning on others wasn't a weakness, but a way to understand each other's feelings better and find compromises. Still, she couldn't shake the thought that she was betraying her own rule, because the one person she couldn't open up to was Yuta, the very person she needed to cooperate with most. Later that evening, Saki went to the convenience store with Shinjo to grab some snacks. On the way back to Mei's house, Shinjo casually revealed to her that he also had a little sister. Over lunch at a diner, Yuta sat across from Kaho, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. Noticing his distant gaze, Kaho told him she was worried and pointed out that he looked like someone running away from something heavy. She guessed he'd been spending time at the study lounge because he was hiding from the pain of a complicated romance. Yuta finally admitted the truth. He had fallen for someone he never should have, and chasing those feelings would only hurt the people around him. He said he knew he ought to forget it all, but no matter how much he tried, he couldn't. Hearing this, Kaho invited him to join her in the city that night, hoping to distract him from his thoughts. At the same time, Shinju decided to be upfront with Saki and confessed his feelings. Saki turned him down gently, saying she wasn't seeing anyone and didn't even have a crush. Shinjo took the rejection gracefully, promising not to bother her again, and walked away with a smile despite the sting. Later, while riding the elevator, Saki remembered Kaho's words about treasuring her emotions once she understood them, and the thought lingered in her heart. Meanwhile, Yuta joined Kaho at a scenic high spot overlooking the city. She told him he reminded her of her younger self, which she admitted annoyed her. She explained that his calm objectivity probably came from growing up without women he could rely on. When Yuta asked if that was true for her as well, Kaho nodded and opened up about her past. She revealed that both of her parents had died in an accident, and to make matters worse, their families had opposed the marriage from the start. At the funeral, relatives cruelly mocked them, saying they had brought it on themselves. The emotion Kaho felt wasn't rage or sorrow, but a deep sense of resignation. She told Yuta she didn't buy his claim of having lost faith in women and quoted something her aunt once told her: "Never give up on your feelings." She shared more advice from her aunt, the kind of words that had made her cry for nights when grieving her parents. Then she asked Yuta if he was trying to bury his own emotions. He admitted that he couldn't bring himself to let them out. Kaho warned him that keeping those feelings locked away would leave scars that never healed. When Yuta argued that his feelings were selfish, she stopped him, saying all feelings were selfish by nature. The next day, Yuta told Saki he had seen her with Shinjo and admitted he'd spent the evening with Kaho. Then, without holding back, he confessed that he had strong feelings for her. Saki immediately accused him of lying, but Yuta said he would never be so cruel as to joke about something that's serious. He made it clear he truly liked her. Saki tried to brush it off, insisting his emotions were just the result of them being siblings, but she soon became overwhelmed. She ran to her room, trembling under her sheets, while Yuta knocked again and again, begging her to talk. At last, she opened the door, pulled him inside, and hugged him tightly. She held his hand and admitted his feelings made her happy, though she couldn't say for sure whether her own emotions came from seeing him as a brother or something more. What she did know was that she wanted to comfort him with hugs whenever he needed them. Saki then suggested they make a compromise, stay siblings in the eyes of everyone else, so they wouldn't create problems for their parents. Yuta agreed, but before she could finish the rest of her condition, she broke down in tears. Yuta held her hands, reassuring her that he trusted her completely. Getting emotional himself, he promised they would protect what they had together, and a tearful Saki thanked him with all her heart. And that's it for today's video, guys. Hope you like this one. Watch the following video, and I will see you in the next one.